Hello, welcome back to our workshop on the Bach cello suites. I am Jean-Guihen Queyras and I am so happy to be back with you. Again, a longer break between two episodes. I apologize for this. Things happen and we had a project, a wonderful project with my dear friends and amazing musicians, Belchia Quartet and Tabia Zimmermann. We played and we recorded the two Brahms sextet. This I will of course let you know when this on my social media when this is released. And it was a wonderful experience. And as it happened, we were recording in Vienna in the wonderful chamber music hall of the Concerthaus. And on the last day of recording, after a very intense last day of recording, because we were a bit short on time, so we were working like crazy, and then we could at last, on the evening of the last day, we could relax and enjoy and have dinner together. And who appears at the end of the dinner? Our common friend, because he knows everybody anyways, and wonderful musician, pianist, composer, Hyung-ki Joo, because he lives in Vienna. And it was so wonderful to see him back there. And I asked him if he could join us today for this episode. And he said yes, he made it possible. So thank you so much, Hyung-ki. And we will see him in about 15 minutes after we discuss the movement of the day. Movement of the day is the Courante from the Sixth Suite in this 33rd episode of our series. My goodness, that doesn't make us younger. And this Courante from the Sixth Suite, as most Courantes, it is, of course, after the Allemande that we talked about in the last episode, I would say more simple harmonically. The structure also is more simple, because basically it's not about transcendental feelings and thoughts and constructions like Bach gives us in some of the Allemands, in some of the Sarabands. But this, again, it's one of the dancing movements. And this will be again the case when we go to the gavottes and to the gigue. And so, as always, it's a dance. What is our groove? What is our step? We are in 3, that's a courante. So 1 and 3, 1 and 3, 1 and 3. So first, he establishes this very clear rhythm and fun dancing groove with two things I would observe already in this beginning, that as he likes to do, he exposed, remember, at the beginning of the prelude, the main element of the very first bars of the prelude was an ascending arpeggio. This was his way to open this suite in joys and life and energy. So this adding the layers on the D major chord. Well, here he does a variation of that. We start on our D, so third. So he adds, well, in a way, even more than the prelude, because we go more than an octave and a half. And so that gives us immediately a swing of 2 bars. And then from here, we will have every bar another harmony. And then for the last bar, we want the bass to move a bit more to make it even more fun. So when the bass, after moving, once in the bar, suddenly it goes which reminds me a little bit, you know, of the in the rock band, you know, the guy who's playing the percussion and then doing, you know, and then comes the guys, he gets a signal, you know, from the singer or whatever, and then he goes, so that's basically what we have here. Now from there we start our little, as always, our little first steps outside of our D major, but in over 4 bars. So we have we reach our first little modulation to the neighboring A major, and here Bach seems to be wanting to rejoice at having reached a new territory, and he wants to stay there for a while. So we're going to stay on this E bass for a while, and we're going to start doing little, you know, I think of an acrobat in the circus, you know, little, but still staying on this. And then we will start, after doing 3 times our juggling, we will start doing a descending sequence, and now sequence, so like really non-stop 16th note. So Bach is rejoicing here at virtuosity that brings energy, and then we, for a moment, again explore our motive. And then we will have again a sequence of fast notes that goes this time ascending. And that's the end of our first part. Now, I want to just take 1 second now about this main motif that we have, super simple one, but nevertheless, I love it, which is this upbeat, and then this 2 16th notes that comes through the whole piece. You know, 2 things I want to say about this for our cellist friends out there. The first thing, I think it's really important that you remember courante. So courante means first beat and then third beat as an upbeat to the first beat. So 1 3 1 3 1. So that means that this motif is happening exactly in the aftermath of the energy that we liberate, that we give on the first beat. And it should be really a sort of part of the same gesture, if you want. You know, or by the way, that's the second thing I was going to say, that in the manuscript of Anna Magdalena, sometimes it's slurred, sometimes you see 3 notes slurred, sometimes you see 2 notes slurred, sometimes nothing. What about enjoying and playing around with the fact that it's different, and don't try to make all the time the same bowing? That's really something I would strongly suggest. So, and then now coming back just to what I just said before, the reason I'm mentioning this thing about how to let this 16th note happen in the wake, in the energy of the first beat, is because very often, well, for years I did it, and now I have students coming to me and we think, oh yeah, the line starts there, so we stay for too long on these first 8 notes of the bar, and therefore we start something new with the 16th note, as if it would belong to the next part of the phrase. This is then, I think, if one does this, one has, first of all, it gives a heaviness to this music, which I think doesn't belong there, and it's simply not the right, you know. Again, if we had our dancer here trying to dance on this, it would sort of force him to stay on this first beat, and instead of immediately be on the move to what comes next. So really think the yam takadam as being beginning of the bar, and the next 8 notes are part an upbeat to the next part. So let's go to our second part. Same motive, same idea of arpeggio, same rhythm than the beginning, but opposite direction. Remember, we were ascending. That was our beginning of second half. So this time reverse order, and he will do this. I will show you during this second half quite a lot. He will enjoy turning things around. So now from here we have arrived in a more distant sort of B minor. Well, not really distant, but we will start a series of sequence, but where our 16th note material is even a bit more crafted, a bit more tricky also to play, I find, than the ones we have in the first half. Remember, they were sort of they not that they are easy, but they fall sort of under the fingers, and they are quite regular. Now we are going to start where we just arrived in this B minor. We will have motifs that are very differentiated. So one note descending and then ascending. The opposite, 3 ascending, 1 descending. And then 2 and 2. And this. So that means in this sort of small complications will give a different kind of life, and I think they need from us interpreter more attention. We cannot play them, as much in the swing as the one we had in the first half. I don't think. Well, that was not very good, but also I don't think it can be straightforward. We need to work a bit more. Also, because we arrive on this beautiful, in this sequence, we arrive on this beautiful chords. Also, they also need attention, and then we go for a longer streak. So we have really stayed. We had this episode in B minor. Now Bach does something that I really enjoy each time I play this Courante. Which is that, remember our motif. Dum tagadum pam 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 pam, a bit like if we are on a horse and going. Well, it's actually the same combination of notes, but he shifts it one bit further, one bit later. So we start on the second beat instead of starting on the first beat. So 3, 2, 1. Yeah, just for fun, for a moment, I will play this like it is at the beginning of the piece. So if I played 1, as you see, it's exactly like a, except that it's not anymore 1 tagadum pam 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 pam. It's the 1 2 tagadum pam pam, and this has 2 consequences for us as players. If you are a cellist out there, I think be aware of that, meaning this time you have a chance, you are that to really play this motif as the start of a line and not being just the mere consequence of the energy of the first beat. So, and then the other thing is that this note, which is actually our modulation to going back to A major. So it's I find it very, very special also because Bach does both these modulation from the upper note always. And then we are again back to normal. 1. So what he did now in these 3 bars is that, as you see, he to create energy, to create that the dancer, after this sort of uncertain passage, comes back on his feet solidly. We have our basic rhythm, and not only this, but Bach, he's augmenting the interval between the 2 voices over the 3 bars to create this extraordinary energy. So we start quite close, a bit further. The bass goes down, the soprano goes up, and then we reach back our D major, the affirmation of our D major. Now, what do we do from here? Again, a virtuoso juggling passage in something that I find a bit hymniolic. It's a bit like an hymniola. Now you all got so much of this word from me, because I find this is a passage where we can really feel it could be. I don't say it is, I say it could be. So if you want, if you enjoy it, why don't you do it? Or maybe in your repeat, something like this. Now we go again with something quite complicated, where there will be 1 modulation in every bar. And not only that, but our soprano is going to move chromatically. So this is always a way for Bach to add tension. So I played in slow motion because I wanted to show you this, how the soprano. So, and as you remember, when he does these chromatic lines, it's adding tension. So, and all of this is ascension, right? Ascending. Now, big jumps, we go from very high notes to bass notes. Sorry. So this is this passage here. I also like very much. I told you he likes to reverse things in the second part, particularly in this movement. Now, remember in the first part. So here we have actually the same rhythm, the same idea, but opposite. That means the 16th notes are down there. And not only this, but this series of 16 notes, this long streak of 16th notes. Remember in the first part, our first long streak of 16th notes was this descending line, and here we have really motivically exactly the same thing as in opposite, in mirror. And now these last 8 bars are like the same as the first part. And all these sort of dancing virtuosity and joy of life is exactly what we need between, if you remember, this quite ecstatic, beautiful allemande, ornamented, very pure object, and the sarabande that is coming with all its chord, its richness, and its elevation, I would say. So here now is the moment to have our guest come and tell us what he thinks of Bach. Dear Hyung-ki, are you there with us? Can we
Yes,
see?
Jean-Guihen.
Ah, fantastic. Dear Yankee, thank you so much for taking the time.
Hey, thanks for having me. I could watch and listen to you all day, man.
Oh,
So fantastic. Really.
thank you so much, Yankee. It's I'm sure it goes. I mean, of course, for you guys, pianists, it must be the same thing multiplied by 100 because you have so much more repertoire by Bach for the keyboard. But I just don't get tired of this mix of uh, life, tenderness, joy, intelligence. It's again and again such a gift to get this from Bach when you open his score. I'm sure. How do you feel about this, dear Yankee?
Well, I mean, first of all, I absolutely love Bach. I love Bach so much. I mean, actually, a year ago, almost today, we experienced this first lockdown, worldwide lockdown, where things seemed quite gloomy and apocalyptic. I mean, you looked outside, it was like a science fiction movie. No one was out. It was like Day of the Triffids or War of the Worlds. I mean, it was really bleak. And people had no idea what was going to happen. And the one thing that kept my soul alive was playing Bach. And so that's how close it is to me. Very often, more often than not, but especially before a concert that I'm particularly nervous about, or that day I'm sort of feeling a little anxious, I very often will listen to Bach before I go on stage, backstage in the dressing room or in my hotel room. I just put on Bach. And and in fact, my next recital project is going to have tons of Bach in it. So Bach is a very important part of my life. Mm-hmm. Now, that being said, I have something very controversial to say, which is that, of course, we pianists, we're totally spoiled. I mean, we have 32 Beethoven sonatas. You guys only have 5, We have 27 Mozart piano concertos. You guys have only 0.
Stop it. So, okay, end of this conversation.
So, we have 48 present fugues, Italian concerto, etc., 6 suites here, English, French, toccatas, and so on and so forth. And of course, no question. I mean, you heard me that I love Bach, and there's no question he's the undisputed genius, probably of all time. However, within that, I would go so far as to say that I am jealous of not being able to play the cello suites, because I believe that the cello suites, how can I say this? Because it's stupid to say that they're superior to the keyboard works, because obviously the keyboard works have an incredible intricacy that the cello works or solo works never could have. I mean, obviously the contrapuntal writing in all the fugues and the art of fugue, I mean, there's no medium that could match that, his writing for organ or keyboard. But, well, first of all, obviously music is very subjective. And so first of all, I'll take that one road and say that the cello suites, I think, are my favorite works of Bach. But I also think that they are more accessible works than the keyboard works. I think, and this is, I'm going to get attacked by all the violinists as well, because I even think that the cello suites are on a level higher than the violin suites and partitas. And what I mean by that is I think that in the solo violin stuff and in the keyboard stuff, he is being his genius, clever self. And with the violin stuff, it's almost like, I mean, when you're Bach and you're such a genius, I mean, you kind of have to outdo yourself. I mean, he's not someone, but with the cello suites, I feel like he just let it happen. I don't really know how to explain it, but there's a simplicity about the cello. It's almost like, there's a saying in German, zu gescheit ist auch blöd. Too clever is also stupid. And I feel like with the violin pieces, I mean, of course, Chacon and all this, but it's almost like he was trying to be genius. And in the cello suites, he just is. And we have so much keyboard repertoire, but I've listened so many times to Goldberg variations, usually the Glenn Gould recordings, so many times. It's probably the thing I've listened to most in my life from the beginning. The Goldberg variations, both recordings and any others. So nevertheless, I would still rather play the cello suites than Goldberg variations. And funnily enough, during this lockdown time a year ago, when, as I told you, I was playing Bach to keep my soul alive, I kind of thought, well, I love the cello suite so much. There must be some amazing keyboard transcriptions of this. So I started looking to see what there was. Now, and I actually found, I was very disappointed. Like, for example, Godowsky, I think, is a masterful piano transcriber and writes wonderfully for the piano. I've played quite a few transcriptions. I played a transcription of his The Swan, Saint-Saëns The Swan, he does beautifully. And I also played some other stuff, Die Forelle from Schubert, etc. And he's also a fantastic composer. But with the cello suites, and also he does some violin stuff on the piano, it's just too much. It's just trying to, you know, the cello suites are so simple, and I don't mean simple in a negative way. I just mean they're just so simply beautiful. And by even someone like Godowsky, who's so clever, it's like almost he was trying too hard. And I think it's very interesting that you don't find that many transcriptions of piano of the solo violin and cello stuff. Yes, Rachmaninoff did a little bit, but he was also very careful. I don't know if it's coincidental, but with what free movements he chose. And there's very little that's really good. And I think those solo works, also on violin and cello, they don't need anything else. They're so craftedly written that, and I remember Yo-Yo Ma talking about Bach. He said something like that Bach elicits the audience to be active or something, to take action, to fill in, to complete what's not there. Now, I don't know if Yo-Yo was talking about the Bach suites or whether he was talking about Bach in general, but that's definitely what I feel with the Bach cello suites, is that because it's only 4 strings and because it's only one line, let's say, harmony and all the other rhythmic agogicness and all that stuff is implied. It's not in your face. Right. And when you have it on a keyboard, let's say, or orchestrated, it's mapped out, and in a way it's kind of dumbed down. And the mystery and the beauty of the cello suites is that you have to fill in the gaps. You have to work to understand it, to follow it. And on the other hand, you can just lie down and just let it happen. So that's my opening statement, Your Honor, on the Bach cello suites.
Well, we are very lucky because your opening statement is really basically a continuation of what we have talked a lot here in this workshop about, that probably one of the main tools that Bach is using is, and that was probably if we had to choose one genius idea that he had when doing this suite, it was to use the limitation of the cello to make something transcendental, that what you don't hear, what is not there, is what gives this music this extraordinary third dimension, that people know that behind, or they know, or they don't need to know, but behind what they hear, there is a whole layer of harmony and bass line and all these things. And that the fact that they are not, as you say, not really given to you just like that, gives this extra and sometimes really metaphysical dimension, like in the sarabande of the Fifth Suite. You were talking about that you were looking for transcriptions because you wanted to. Have you considered trying to do one yourself of one of the suites or some movements or something?
Well, it's interesting you mentioned that because I actually I suddenly remembered that a long time ago, I actually took a class in performance practice with Kenneth Cooper, who actually recently passed away. And Kenneth Cooper was one of the great authoritarians on performance practice of Baroque times. And he even did, I think he even recorded with Yo-Yo, the Bach cello keyboard sonatas.
Yeah, true. Yeah, beautiful recording.
And so I was taking this class and there was some assignment. I can't even remember what the assignment was, but I decided to take the saraband of the C minor Fifth Suite, the one you just mentioned, because I just thought, I mean, this piece is, I mean, I know I can't swear on IDAGIO, but, you know, WTF. I mean, this is unbelievable music. I mean, I'm sorry, I don't think, maybe Bach's Goldberg variation, the slow minor variation comes close to this, but this C minor saraband is something else. And I was so moved by it and so impressed that I wrote a piece based on it, a kind of unmeasured prelude. And actually Bach, I only discovered many years later, much later, that he also did kind of write some unmeasured preludes, which is more the type of thing that Louis Couperin would have done. Which was a little bit earlier, of course, than Bach. And Bach's preludes are more, let's say, systematic. But there are one or two which are more free and more open, more this kind of unmeasured feeling. Anyway, I was trying to recreate this world of the saraband, sort of recomposed it, let's say. And I remember Kenneth Cooper was not very happy with me. But I don't know if he liked the piece or not. I don't think that was relevant. I think he was just very disappointed in me because I just didn't follow what he expected me to do. But you know, I was so moved by this Bach saraband, and for me it was like, well, it fits to this time. We're talking about Baroque and Renaissance. Well, you know, this is what I'm going to do. So I have written a kind of piece based on Bach. Actually, I've written another piece based on Bach, which is in my first string quartet called Tributes. And there I know Zoom is very bad sound quality, but there's the French suite in B minor. And I kind of flipped it upside down and transmogrified it, so it turned out something like this. Etc., etc. So, but as far as an actual transcription of the cello suite, of course I'd love to do it, but I mean, if Godowsky couldn't do it, I don't think I can do it.
It's a nice way out. I totally understand. I have a question. It's so wonderful. You know the how broad your activities are, and of course, many people know you through this absolutely genius work you do in the Igudesman Joo duo, and I think you guys are just such masters in presenting to us great music playing and working with our neurons and making us laugh and yet rejoice about music. So it's absolutely really a fantastic brand that you guys created, and it's each time. Last time we met, you and I, well, before Vienna, which I mentioned now, but last year or the year before, just before not long before I think 1 year before the whole confinement story, we met in Munich because I was there to play with the orchestra. And on my free night, you guys were playing. I went there, of course. I went there with our common friend. Yes, and so basically what I wanted to say is that when you maybe a stupid question, but when you do this, so it's a lot of it's, first of all, I imagine, a a lot of work to construct the thing, the format and everything. Like it's a bit like imagine a bit like in improvisation in jazz, that the more you improvise, the more you have to work before, you know. So and you give this such a feeling on stage of just having fun and everything. So and I'm sure it's hours and hours and days of work, of writing of the thing. But and then but can you let go on stage? And my question is this: is it very different, or in the end, is it a bit similar to what you do when you play Bach, when you play classical repertoire, where, you know, we work, we have to learn, we have to do all these things. And then it's all about, in the moment of playing, in the moment of sharing the music with the people, it's all about rejoicing at what the composer does, and at seeing the music come to life. Does it make sense?
Yeah, it's not a stupid question at all. And there's so many ways to answer that. Let me start by saying, I think most of us, well, probably all of us who've ever played a classical instrument or any instrument and want to and take it quite seriously, you know, obviously we want to be as good as we want to be, as good as possible. However, I think sometimes, or more than sometimes actually, we think that that's the end goal, to be as perfect as possible, or to be as accomplished as possible, however you want to phrase it in words. But what I'm trying to say is that I think we often forget that music is way more powerful than a perfect polished performance. Than a Bach suite performed impeccably with perfect intonation and wonderful interpretation and what have you. Those things, of course, we rise to that. But, well, let me make it more simple. I have heard sometimes performances from, let's say, quote unquote, amateur musicians, people who are doctors or whatever. They just play as a hobby, or they played when they were a kid, and they're not serious like you and me, let's say, yes? They don't pay their rent from what we do, and they don't, you know, whatever, make recordings like, so, etc., etc. So from that point of view, they're amateurs. But I have sometimes been more moved by their performances than people who are professionals, because there is a transmission of energy, of love and dedication to what they're doing, which transcends all the wrong notes and the wrong bowings and the bad pedaling and what have you. And I think that message, that intention of what you wish to say, in my opinion, way outweighs the execution. And so, in other words, I think that when it comes to people like you and me, yes, of course, we practice and we want to do our best. But what is it for? It's so that when we are in that situation where we're about to communicate Bach or whatever, that we just let go. And we let the magic happen. And we are so, especially in the classical music world, because it's all about a certain type of recreative execution of the printed material on the page. We get blinkered by that, and we think that that's what we have to convey. And I think that inhibits us and prevents many of us from really transcending and really giving a message across. And I believe that that's the power of music. So, and I think that's where jazz musicians and other type of musicians maybe have a slight advantage, because their thing, and well, it's funny, we're talking about Bach because we all know that during Bach's time, they improvised. I mean, many of Bach's scores are only 50% finished because the rest of it was left to the performer. So we've completely lost that tradition. Until the beginning of the 20th century, we still had that tradition of improvisation. Mm-hmm. And I think it's a big shame that we've lost that. And I think, yes, it's all about it in that. I mean, you know, Federer and Nadal, I mean, they're not thinking about their forehand and you know, the spin of the ball or whatever. I mean, they let go. Mm-hmm. At that moment. They're playing. and there's something else that takes over. You have to just trust, you have to lean back, you have to fall into the abyss of the unknown and let the magic happen. Let the work, trust that the work has been done, and then just have fun.
Great. Dear Hyung-ki, I could listen to you the whole night. We have to leave the we have to leave the stage for the next show on IDAGIO here on the platform. Thank you so much for taking the time. It was really wonderful to see you again, and I hope we see again each other in real, like a great surprise, like last week in Vienna.
Yeah, fantastic. And I want to say something. I know it's going to sound very obsequious, very much like I'm flattering the interviewer, but I have to say that I absolutely love your recording of the Bach suites.
Oh, thank you so much, Yankee. Thank you.
I'm not saying that because you're there. I really love it. I think it's just beautiful musicianship, and it's really one of my favorite recordings to listen to.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Dear friends, exceptionally this time, I can say quite certainly that I will be here next week. This time, unless really something bad happens, I expect to be here next week, and we will talk about the Sarabande from the Sixth Suite. My guest will be Arthur Nestrovsky. He is also somebody a bit like Yankee, who has many who is very inventive and a very broad artistic life. He is a composer, but he's also the artistic director of the São Paulo Orchestra. And as it happens, he released, as a composer now, about 4 months ago, an album together with his daughter, who is singing, and they released an album which is called Sarabande, but a very different type of sarabande, but that will be very interesting to talk to him right after we will have explored the sarabande from the Sixth Suite. And one last thing that has nothing to do with the show, but because people have sent me some mail and some questions about this. I always have some nice painting behind me. This time, as you can see, it's a different one than the last ones. All of these paintings are from my son, Jérémy. And I recommend go to his Instagram or to his Facebook, Jean-Guihen Queyras. He is wonderful. It's such a gift to have a son who is so artistic, and we also more and more share the stage together. We were on stage together doing live painting on music in Greece last September. We will do in Rovigo in Italy next September, and in the Cello Biennale next year. So we have some projects together. I must say, this is an amazing gift. Okay, so good night to everybody. Stay healthy and see you soon. Thank you so much.